we can tell anybody this, because no one's going to do it. Because it's too damned hard. It's too damned hard. It's not difficult. It's really, really hard. When the rubber meets the road and you have to deal with the customers, the people, the facilities, when you really got to look at your business in the mirror and make those calls, it's when it gets hard. So what I'll tell you now is kind of my favorite lesson in 80-20, and it's what I call the story of a rock. And it's a great 80-20 lesson. So I'll do it short. In 2 days I have more time, it's kind of more fun, but you'll get the message. So I have in front of me, in my hand, a rock. It's just a rock. So what I do is, when I'm doing this for 2 days, I'll give it to a table, I'll give it to your table. Now say, give me one word that will describe this rock. And you'll look at it and you'll say, well, it's jagged, and it's gray, and it's small, I guess, and it's light. Yeah, it's just a rock, concrete. And they're right, by the way. That's all it is. It's small, jagged, light. It's a rock. But what you now know, I'm sure you know by now that there's a hook coming, right? There's some reason I'm doing this, right? And so then I tell you the rest of the story, right? So the rest of the story revolves around June 6, 1944. Does anybody know what happened on June 6, 1944? D-Day. D-Day was June 6, 1944. That was the day that the combined forces of the Allies, the Americans, the Brits, the Canadians, the Free French, the Australians, everybody, took their one shot at Hitler's Festung Europa, the European fortress, the Atlantic Wall. That was one shot. And it was a desperate gamble, right? Now, with the benefit of hindsight, of course, people think, well, of course, the Allies were going to win, right? But Eisenhower didn't feel that way. On the morning of June 6th, Eisenhower had 2 letters in his pocket. They were both addressed to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. One said, the landings have succeeded, our men have formed beachheads, and they're moving inland. The other said, the landings have failed, I have withdrawn the troops. If there's any failure to be attached to this, it is mine and mine alone. He just didn't know which one he would send. It was a touch-and-go affair, to be sure. And of the many stories that happened there, and I consider myself nothing if not an amateur historian, and nothing if not an admirer of our greatest generation, I know a lot about that. That's because of my dad. One of my uncles, my Uncle Ed, he drove one of the Higgins boats on D-Day. You know what the Higgins boats did? They drove the guys in where they'd all get killed, and then he'd drive back and get more of them to get killed. I never knew this, but my uncle had PTSD, and he dreamt every night for the rest of his life having to wash out the Higgins boats after every session. My Uncle Jim fought at Tarawa. That was not D-Day, that was Japan, where they attacked the Japanese island. And my Uncle Jim's best friend, they were moving with their squad to attack a pillbox. Japanese soldier threw a grenade in the middle of the squad. My Uncle Jim's best friend jumped on the grenade, saved the squad. Years later, I was playing in his basement with my cousins, and we found my Uncle Jim's toolbox. And in there was a silver star, a bronze star, Purple Heart. We took him upstairs and said, Uncle Jim, you were a hero. He said, heroes are still there. And my dad, he didn't fight. My dad and my grandfather were chosen by the government in 1939 to redesign the Browning automatic rifle, which was jamming. My grandfather and my father were geniuses, brilliant men. And that was their job. And they redesigned it, and it didn't jam. And that design was kept in place until like 1995. So pretty cool. I have a lot of respect for that. And my dad felt tremendous guilt. He felt he didn't do enough for his country because he didn't serve. So one day, I am at a talk where the colonel from Black Hawk Down, Somalia, was giving a keynote speech. He talked about the lost battalion, and he said, we'd have all been killed, but at the last minute, a Black Hawk helicopter came, 3 special forces men, 2 Rangers and a SEAL, dropped down, set up a rear guard action, and held out the enemy for 15 minutes before they got killed, which allowed us to leave. They paid for our survival with their lives. And then the key moment. He said they held him off with 3 Browning automatic rifles. I get emotional. I went up to the colonel afterwards. I said, my grandfather, my dad, they did this, and I showed him. And he said, that was your dad? I said, yeah. And I said, my dad lives in guilt like he never did enough. Colonel called his adjutant over, wrote something on the stationery, sealed it up, gave it to me. He said, get this to your dad. Don't tell him, don't look at it, just tell him who did it. So I went home, I saw my dad. I said, this came from the colonel from Black Hawk Down. He opened it. And it said, dear Mr. Hahn, this colonel, this full-bird colonel, owes his life and the lives of 196 of his men to 3 operators. He listed them. And he said it to you and your dad, my father, my grandfather. He said, don't ever think you didn't do enough for this country. You saved my lives and thousands of others. I saw my dad cry 3 times. Once when my mom died, I was 18. Once when my sister got hit by a car and killed exactly 1 year later. And the 3rd time, when he read that note. A lifetime of grief came out in that one moment. So pardon me for the departure, but I have a lot of beliefs in the greatest generation. So the story I tell about D-Day, there's a place called Pointe d'Arc. Anybody ever been to Omaha Beach, Normandy, France? You gotta go if you've never been. Saving Private Ryan. Who has seen Saving Private Ryan? It's the scene with the crosses. That's the Omaha Beach National Cemetery, right? That's near Pointe d'Arc. So at Pointe d'Arc, the Germans had placed machine gun nests and long-range artillery, and it was meant to, it was sighted the draws, the beaches, the channel. The Allies had to take it out. There was no way they could do it. They couldn't bomb it. They couldn't take it by landward invasion, of course. They had to do it by amphibious assault, which meant that guys had to come up against this 200-foot promontory, climb it by hand, get to the top, take out the machine gun nest, move inland, take out the guns, and then hold it against resupply and counterattack for 48 hours with no hope of resupply or reinforcement. And the 2nd Rangers volunteered, they took the job. On the morning of June 6, 44, they went in. One of the boats tipped over on the way in. They were down to 175 guys. They climbed up under small arms fire. They lost half their men. They were down to about 100. They attacked the machine gun nests. They took them out. They lost half their men doing that. Now they moved inland. It took a while to find the guns. They finally found them. Staff Sergeant Leonard Lamell and his aide found the guns. They spiked them with C4. They blew them up. The other guys were providing covering fire. They lost half the number then. Now they're down to 25 effectives with no hope of reinforcement. They fought off 3 counterattacks in the next 48 hours. And then when they were done, 9 members of the 2nd Rangers walked off Pointe d'Arc. And I was there, not that day. But you can still go there. The bomb craters are there. The barbed wire is there. The machine gun nests are there. It's sacred ground. And when I was there twice. I cried both times, by the way. The first time I thought I was overcome. 2nd time I realized it was really powerful. So the 2nd time I was there, I bumped into a machine gun nest. I was just walking by with my son trying to explain it to him. He was 7. I bumped into a machine. This rock fell off. I was supposed to leave it. There's a sign there that says you're not supposed to take anything. It's in French. I'm fluent in French. I was going to put it down. Then a bus pulled up, and I saw some kids get off 2nd and 3rd grade French kids. They're throwing rocks at each other, and I figured this rock is going to be perfect. And they're going to either throw it in some little kid's eye, or they're going to throw it in the English Channel. And I thought it would look better on my mantle as a permanent memento reminder to my dad, my uncles, and to those 200 guys who on the morning of June 6, 1944, paid with the last full measure of their devotion, taking this rock. So then I asked the table again, give me 5 words, a word to describe this rock. And the words are now different, aren't they? Now it's heroic, and it's sacrifice, and it's monumental, and one person said I'm speechless, and one person who said it was small now said it was large. And what happened? Right? What happened? How did this How did that happen? Well, in the words of, and now by the way, this is where I take it and I zip it back up again. I mean, crazy, it's a rock, right? And yet I zip it up. It's so meaningful to me. It was just a rock 5 minutes ago. And then it became, well, something else. Why? Because now, in the words of Paul Harvey, you now know the rest of the story. Right? Before it was just a rock, and now it's Normandy itself. And so it carries special meaning. And that's your greatest 80-20 lesson. Because what happens when you get into this, right? When I would get into this, so I look at a client, right? I ask for the quads, I ask for the quartiles, I ask for the key ratio, right? And the inventory levels, and the salary, and the org chart. And you know what it is to me? It's a bunch of rocks. It's just a bunch of rocks. Now I start talking to the people who actually live in that company day to day, and it ain't a bunch of rocks to them. Like I'll say, like this product, how many of these did we sell last year? 4. Okay. We've got 777,000 in stock. Let's write them off. We can't do that. Why? The founder of our firm invented these. We can't get rid of them. Normandy. Normandy. To me, it's a rock to them, it's Normandy. One time I walked in, there was an engineer sound asleep. I said, what's that guy doing? He's sleeping. I said, does he work here? Oh, yeah. Who is he? He's our chief engineer. I said, what's he doing? He's sleeping. Well, what does he do most days? He sleeps. Well, why is he paid a lot? He's our highest paid engineer. I said, well, why don't we get rid of him? He is the guy that has the first 7 patents the company ever came up with. To me, it's to them, it's, Normandy is defined is those things that you know you need to do to make your business more profitable, to grow better, to be the best version of itself, to become something that's not. It's defined as those things you know you need to do, but you can't do because the emotional attachment to the past is too strong. And if you don't believe that it's there, don't believe anything more fully than that. You will run into those things as much as you believe that you are logical. You know, Mr. Spock once said, right, that logic is the beginning but not the end of wisdom. You are going to run into that. And so what I do now when I run into that is they'll say, I suppose you're going to make me get rid of it. And I'll say, no. You are allowed to keep your Normandies. But I'm going to have you create a new line item on your P&L. Get ready. Just below the op income line and just above the net income line, I want you to put a new line in there, and I want you to call it voluntary surrender. Voluntary surrender are the cost of those Normandies that you will not do. I don't need you to get rid of them. I just need you to be able to quantify them. And then eventually, when they get so big that the cost of keeping them exceeds the value of the Normandy, you'll do something about it. But Normandy is the reason why 80-20 doesn't get done. Because of that emotional attachment to things that really kind of don't matter, like my rock.